Welcome to a new Petrolhead Classics video. Today we're presenting one of the most recognizable sports cars of the 1970s and 80s. This is a 1987 Mercedes 560 SL. What makes this example so special is that it has covered only 34,000 kilometers from new. That is only 20,000 miles for our friends in the United Kingdom and the US. It has had only 2 previous owners and is in a fantastic original condition. Now, even if Mercedes built plenty of these cars, it will be almost impossible to find another car with this mileage and history. It is also not a North American car. It originates from Japan, which means that it was delivered from the factory like this, with European specification headlights and bumpers. Many cars that are imported from the US are converted to European specification, which is of course fine, but this is how the car left the factory. So it's the best of both worlds really, the largest engine and the classic styling. Before we look at this particular example in more detail, let's take a step back and look at the history of the R107, which is the Mercedes internal code for this generation of cars. I guess everyone has their own memory of this model. My first came as a little kid when I was watching American TV series, and I remember being very impressed by Bobby Ewing's red SL when he came home from work after a long day in the office, parking it in front of South Fork Ranch. Now, this was really the ultimate symbol of success and wealth back in the day, and these cars were enormously expensive. When new in some markets, they cost as much as a Ferrari. This 560 SL is the last iteration of the R107, built for the last 3 years of an 18-year production run. Impressive by any automotive standard. The R107 saw the light of day in 1971, and it really was a giant leap forward to Mercedes and took their cars into the modern era. It had been designed in the end of the 60s, where safety was a main concern. People even thought that cabriolets might be banned altogether. So obviously safety was one of the main concerns. The other main targets for the development was comfort, refinement and power. For the first time, customers could choose a V8 engine, whereas the predecessor, the Pagoda, had to make do with 6-cylinder engines. Talking about safety, in addition to having a very stiff chassis with crumble zones front and rear, Mercedes designed the windshield frame to carry the weight of the car in case of a rollover. Pretty impressive. Apart from the timeless and beautiful design, there are many great features of these cars, such as the front indicators and rear lights with ribs to keep them clean, and the windshield wipers sweeping a large area of the windscreen. This is the 3rd generation Mercedes SL, following the legendary 190 SL and the Pagoda. SL stands for Sport Leicht, which is German for sport light. Now, these cars are anything but light, but that's not really the point. They are more like a grand tourer and comfortable cruiser, and that is what they do the best. Whereas the first cars had cast iron block engines and sluggish 3-speed automatic gearboxes, by the time our car was built, Mercedes turned to all aluminium engines and improved 4-speed auto gearboxes. These last cars even came with ABS brakes. The R107 was offered with a wide range of engines, from a 2.8 litre straight 6 all the way to this 5.6 litre V8. The 560 SL came out on the market in 1986 and was offered for North America, Japan and Australia only. Now, Mercedes had an issue in the United States with emissions regulations, meaning that the engine that was available in Europe, 500 SL with 245 horsepower, couldn't be had. So in order to address this issue, Mercedes increased the capacity of the V8 engine and offered it for these markets, where also torque is a very important driving characteristic. So while this engine has slightly less power, 238 horsepower compared to 245, in Europe it has a lot of low down torque. Okay, let's have a look under the bonnet. So what is very visible is the huge air filter. Underneath you will find the throttle body and the Bosch fuel distribution system. The engine is down here, 5.5 liter V8. This is the air induction. It has a very sophisticated Bosch injection system, which is extremely reliable, and basically these engines can go on forever if they are properly serviced with regular oil and filter changes. So the engine is all aluminium with a 2-valve per cylinder head. Also what we can see is that this car is in a fantastic original condition. The plastic hasn't aged at all. You see some minor traces of age, but it's basically like finding a 2 or 3 year old car rather than a car that is 34 years old. It's also important to look at the vehicle identification. This black plate shows the VIN number and is required by law. This other plate is basically a copy of the Mercedes data card. It shows all the codes for the equipment of the car, such as air conditioning, ABS, electric windows, etc. Then we have the VIN stamped into the frame here, and here we have an original sticker describing the air conditioning system. What is also quite special with this car is that the sound insulation under the bonnet is intact and in as new condition. This is another example of an original sticker that has been with the car since new. Very rare to find these days. Okay, so let's have a look inside the boot. As you can see, it's pretty big and definitely enough for 2 persons going on a holiday together. Now, I mentioned earlier how original this car is, and one example is the carpet. It's in pristine condition. Now if we lift this carpet up, we'll find the cover for the spare wheel, which is also in pristine condition. And underneath we have the original spare wheel, which has probably never been taken out of the car. Another thing that is very special is this original instruction for how to fit the aluminum wheels. We have an original padding here. Obviously the whole of the boot and trunk is rust free and in extremely good condition. Behind this cover we'll find the battery. Now the only reason why the cover isn't flush with the side here is because a slightly higher battery than standard has been mounted in the car. Here we also find the jack. What I personally love about this car is that it has MB-Tex on the inside. It tends to withstand the test of time much better than leather, and the center of the seats and the door cards are clad in a fantastic checkered fabric. I just think that this looks absolutely stunning in combination with the diamond blue paint. So again, if we have a look at the door cards, how well they are made with this fabric inserts, the chrome surrounding the handle and the lock. Of course it has a classic big Mercedes steering wheel, classic instruments that changed very little since 1971, and we also see the mileage of the car as being only 34,000 kilometers. The center console with the wood veneer is in pristine condition, no cracks, no damage. It has an original Mercedes Becker Mexico cassette deck, which is very 1980s of course. Air conditioning to keep you cool on a hot summer day, electric windows, heated seats, basically all the amenities that you would expect of a modern car and that had arrived by the end of the 1980s. If we have a look behind the seats, this is actually one area to be wary about in some of these cars. If they're used with a hardtop and is not sealing properly, then water can get in. Not so here. Again, this is the way the car left the factory. absolute pristine condition. And I'll illustrate that by lifting the carpet that is behind the seats and showing you the area underneath, still wearing the black insulation and showing that the body is absolutely intact and as new. So after we've had a proper look at the car, I think it's time to take it for a ride. So we're now in the car, ready to take it for a drive. As you can hear, the engine is very, very smooth. It idles at between 500 and 1000 RPM. Very, very quiet, but the power is there when you need it. Also, the seats are very comfortable. It's just a very good place to be. If you look around the dashboard, it actually didn't change that much from 1971, but of course there were many amenities available by 1987, which you didn't have in the 70s. Electric windows, good air conditioning, ABS brakes. This car has a lovely original Becker Mexico cassette deck. So it's a good place to be. Also, naturally, you have a cruise control. You need that in a luxury car. So let's set off, take the car for a drive. Okay, so we're out on the open road. This is the perfect habitat for an R107. Cruising along at 70 kilometers an hour. But if you step on the gas, the power is there. Very, very strong acceleration. As I mentioned earlier, it's a 5.5 liter V8, 238 horsepower. Now that may not sound like much in today's world, but in the mid-80s, a Porsche 911 or Ferrari 308 had around 230, 250 horsepower, so this was a very powerful car. But again, these cars are more about grand touring, cruising, in comfort. But again, the power is there when you need it. Obviously, the car comes with complete documentation. This is the original Mercedes pouch, with the driver's handbook, with service heft and other manuals. What you see to the right are basically the Japanese service records at different mileages, showing when the car was at the authorized dealer. Another way of knowing whether a car is original is to look at the soft top windows. They have Mercedes markings on them, and if you buy an aftermarket hood today, and even if you get it from Mercedes, it won't have this on the window. So this is a good way of telling that a hood is original. It's always a pleasure for us as a small boutique dealer to handle a car like this. It's really original, low mileage, and has clearly been well taken care of by the previous two owners as well as the current one. I think it's splendid, fantastic color combination, and would take pride of place in any collection in the world. And I would challenge anyone to find a better R107 example than this. I've truly enjoyed the ride, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have questions, if you would like to know more about this car, don't hesitate to contact us.